So, now let's turn to intelligence assessment and the measurement of intelligence. As we did for personality, in this section, we're going to look at why we assess intelligence, but also why intelligence testing began in the first place. This should give you more insight into the historical context of the development of intelligence testing and why it is that it may continue to be developed in very controversial circumstances. We'll also look at how we assess intelligence and some important concepts in intelligence assessment, as well as look at just a couple of examples of standard or commonly used intelligence assessments. Now, you may already have read about Sir Francis Galton and his ideas about intelligence. These ideas are that the differences in people's intelligence is quantifiable. In other words, we can measure it with numbers, and people will either have less of it or more of it. Another idea is that intelligence scores can be conceptualized as forming a normal distribution, a concept that we've already discussed. Thirdly, Sir Francis Galton had an idea that you can measure intelligence with objective tests. In other words, there are a specific set of tests and procedures and questions that you can use with everyone, and these questions had only one right answer. We've already talked about correlations, so in intelligence testing you could see how two measures were related. What I want to see from this is that actually these ideas underpin other forms of assessment, not just tests of intelligence. What's probably more controversial in intelligence testing is point 3, that the tests are objective in the sense that there's a clear right or wrong answer. You'll see that the notion of right and wrong are not always black and white, such that the intelligence test score you end up with is not always correct. Why are the notion that intelligence tests are objective, that is, that there's one right or wrong answer, and that intelligence is quantifiable, so controversial? Well, this all comes with a history. Psychology and psychological practice does not exist in a vacuum. It's just as influenced by politics and public policy. Intelligence is such a valued prize in our society, so part of the problem is that historically intelligence tests have been the source of group comparisons, and it's been used to determine who gets what resources. In the case of the United States, it was part of the immigration policies in the early days which fueled prejudice and discrimination against minorities. It also currently provides a gauge of who should receive additional educational support in our schools, either in terms of being gifted or in terms of requiring additional support. But at the base of it, Galton's view that intelligence, a highly prized quality, was genetic and measurable meant that you could identify which people and which groups were superior or inferior. In other words, intelligence testing and the notion of right and wrong answers was no longer an issue of description. It was an issue of moral value and worth. This is the worldview in which intelligence testing was developed, based on specific views about what intelligence was, which at the time was heavily influenced by education, and also being used for political purposes. Given that the group comparisons and what they mean is still being debated by some authors, it's clear that the controversy will continue for some time.